start off with what is happening with the economy right now. We have Trump with his tax cuts. We have tariffs. People are talking about trade wars. And the central banks, they're talking about raising the interest rates. So we have all of this and unwinding and other things. We have all of this happening at the same exact time. Is this a recipe for disaster, or is this something where it's going to help the economy and we're going to see good days ahead?
Oh, okay. Well, actually, it's a recipe for disaster because everything is so stretched. And these experiments have now been going on, this current round of experiments, since 2008, so for 10 years. And that means that all of the fiat money assets that were targeted for reflation are really bubblicious. And now they're trying to undo these experiments. Well, they didn't know the impact that it was going to have going in, and they sure don't know the impact that it's going to have going out. And I don't, you're counting on perfection, and central banks are human. They are not omnipotent. They may seem so at times. This is a Fed-led, well, not just a central bank-led rally, but it could also be a central bank-led crash. So, no, I don't think things are great.
Now, we know the Fed is unwinding right now, and the ECB said they're going to start, tapering their stimulus. Wasn't this the juice that has been keeping the economy going? And if they pull back on all this, are they purposely getting ready to bring down the system? Or, what are they trying to accomplish here?
Well, really, that's a really good point, because when I did my study on all the laws on the books pertaining to gold, and I worked from most current and went backwards, I saw a pattern where events were actually, they looked pretty planned to me. And the system, remember, what fuels this whole system is constantly compounding debt. And interest rates are the tool that they use to speed that up or slow that down. And since the world has been anchored at 0% interest, that means that they're out of the tools that they typically would use to do that, which is why they're trying to unwind and normalize something that really isn't really normal to begin with. So, my feeling on this is that they have stated since 2013, I have heard them repeatedly call for a reset. Well, they have to reset because they're out of those tools. They've used up. There's no purchasing power left in the dollar or any of the other currencies. That's been eroded over time through inflation, which is its most important function, and they're out of the tools to keep this game going. So they know they need a reset. What they're trying to do is a planned demolition. I don't know that can work.
So you're saying the central banks, they're in trouble right now. They don't know.
Huge.
So they don't know. And when you say reset, you mean get rid of the debt, go into a new currency?
Exactly. Or even to transition us into the new financial system that they have in mind, which goes into the cryptocurrencies and cyberspace. But the old system that started in 1971 was based on debt. The debt is not payable, and the interest on that debt is ever increasing. I did a study, I think it was maybe 2007, 8, 9, somewhere in there. And because I said, well, at that point, we were running about $1 trillion worth of deficit in total since 71, when this whole system came into place. But we were at that time servicing like 12 or 13 trillion in debt. And most of that deficit happened during the crisis. So I said to myself, well, if we I don't mean only to be so flippant, but what if we're only running $1 trillion deficit, and most of that has been since the crisis? Why in the world are we servicing 12, 13 trillion in debts? So, on the Fred, you can get all that data and really understand what a deficit is. That means that they're using their credit card to buy stuff. And when you use that credit card to buy stuff, then the debt starts to accumulate. So 77% at that time was compounding interest. Well, if you put it on a personal level, if you have income of $100, but you're servicing debt of $13,000, but you've only spent $200 more than you had, that's all compounding interest. You never get out of debt. And since that's what creates money in the system, they have to reset the debt. And the US dollar or the Japanese yen or any of them are debt instruments. They just don't pay interest. Well, they may in the future, but at this point, they don't pay interest, but they're debt instruments. So the whole entire system, based on a foundation of never-ending debt, has to reset. It doesn't work anymore. It's broken. It died in 2008. It's a zombie system.
So you're talking about a crash of the system.
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, not one doubt in my mind.
What do you think will signal the next crash?
I think we've been getting signals for quite some time. I know that I've personally been talking about pattern shifts and showing people these pattern shifts really that have been speeding up since October pretty substantially, with insiders really, running for the exits. And the insiders are the heads of the corporations, the boards of directors, the CEOs, the CFOs. So I look at what they're doing, and we've also seen global central banks, not in this country, not Canada, but everywhere else, massively accumulating gold. And gold is a savings-based currency. So that's why they're accumulating it, because they're preparing for this debt, this whole reset of the debt.
Yeah, Hungary is asking for its gold back now. They want to repatriate their gold. China and Russia.
You should all repatriate it.
Yeah. How about the U.S.? Is the U.S. bringing back gold, or do you think they still have gold? I mean,
I don't think
out there. He held up a gold bar.
Yeah. Well, the gold bar is there, but who owns it is questionable. Okay. So, no, the U.S. is not calling for repatriation because presumably we have all of this gold. And, I got to be honest with you. I hope that's true. I don't believe it to be true with all the leasing and all of this that's been going on. But I really hope that it's true, because any individual knows. I mean, quite frankly, who lives a life unscathed, right? We all go through financial crisis, not to the scale that is, but on an individual basis, and we're all key to our families. Well, you make some mistakes fiscally. If you have savings, well then, okay, you can throw money at it and you can get out of that crisis. If you have no savings when that happens, how do you get out of that crisis? For governments, they go to a new system. And so, I don't know if you've noticed, but technology has certainly been speeding up since 2008. And I think that what happened in 2008 with Lehman Brothers and the bursting of that derivative bubble, that teeny weeny itty bitty one, I don't think they expected it. And in fact, recently they've been doing a lot of interviews, and I don't remember who said this, But when he said it, it really resonated with me because the central bank, what he said, and this was somebody that was involved in the bailouts and through the whole thing. But what he said was that it was not a failure of the system. It was a failure of technology. So this is why they never repaired anything. They never really made any really significant changes. They just, for governments, I guess their savings is the printing press. And they just put that on full bore to cover it up, but they didn't fix anything. And they know they didn't. So if their feeling was it wasn't a failure of the bets and the debts and the leverage and the credit system and that whole piece, well, why would they fix it? You know, if it's about technology, then let's just really focus on that and make that happen so that this next crisis, I don't know how they're going to cover it up. Their balance sheets are so ridiculously stretched. That's what they're trying to work off now. And it's minuscule. It's too little. It's too late. And it's not going to work.
I just want to go back to the gold and how certain countries and central banks are accumulating a lot of gold. And if we're headed towards this reset and we come to find that there is no gold in Fort Knox, there is nothing there, maybe, you know, one room full of gold, but that's not going to be enough. What happens then? I mean,
well, first of all, let's talk about the enough part first, because it's not that there needs to be a lot more gold so that they can create a lot more money. What the gold always has done historically in the system is created fiscal responsibility. And so when they do the reset is about resetting the debt, but also the in this country, the dollar amount of that reset is really based on how much of that new debt-based money they've printed. So where I would say that if they did a global reset, which is what I think will happen, but if they did a global reset, we'd be north of 9,000 or 10,000 bucks. If it were based on the debt and the amount of gold, and assuming that they actually have this gold in this country, you're looking at more like somewhere north of 50,000 an ounce. And I really never talk about that because for most people, it's hard to comprehend. But I'll bet you if you told somebody in 1913 that this 1 ounce $20 coin was someday going to be 1,300 bucks, that would have been a challenge for them to believe as well. So it doesn't matter because the paper, those pieces of paper, they have no value. Gold has value because of its use. So it doesn't matter how much gold that if it's an individual country that they have during a reset, the price of the gold will go up to cover however much of the fiat money that they have created. On a global basis, that's where it really matters more who holds most of the gold, because in this global reset, whoever holds the gold means that they've got savings. So they have something to work with when the rest of whoever else does not have that. And that's how the wealth is transferred. So I kind of got stuck on that one piece. What was the second part of your question? No, I'm sorry. Do you remember?
No, yeah.
It's just because that's the fallacy out there. Well, we can't be on the gold system. There's not enough. Well, gold creates fiscal responsibility. So maybe you're 100% back. Maybe now you're only 50%. And that's really what happened over time. First, we were 100% backed. And then we were 25% backed. And by 71, there was no backing. And so you can see how the lack of fiscal responsibility has led up to today. And that's who you're counting on to unwind their balance sheet so they can keep this game going. But I don't think they really intend to. I do think it's a planned event.
So my other part of the question was, if we're going to go through this reset and we don't have the gold here in this country, there's nothing there. How does it affect what's going to happen here then?
Well, we know that the power has been shifting from the U.S. to China. China has been voraciously accumulating gold, and the IMF is the one that tasked them, so the International Monetary Fund. And the International Monetary Fund oversees everybody in the world, and they have what's called an SDR substitution fund. And so what really will happen in this country is we will experience what the hyperinflation that Venezuela is experiencing right now. And that's what's going to happen. Our standard of living is going to shift dramatically. I don't know. I could tell you globally on average, about 80% of the population ends up in abject poverty. In Venezuela, that number is 90%. And since we're talking about Venezuela, oh, by the way, they did a formal reset of their currency to gold. And I'll have Megan send you that too. But they did a formal reset of their currency to gold on February 9th. February 9th, Venezuela formally reset. And it went up on that day just that day when they did the reset. I could be off a little bit since that data is not right in front of me, but something like 2,444 times.
Wow.
And that just happened on February 9th. And I don't know if it's just coincidental to when the stock market started to break down and disintegrate visually, but I think it's quite interesting that, you want to see what it looks like? Look at Venezuela. They're just a little ahead of us.
Yeah. So are the banks prepared for this reset? I mean, the Fed continually tells us that, they had the stress tests. They're telling us that the banks are strong. Europe is saying everything is great. Are the banks ready to weather the storm when we go through this reset?
Not at all. When they talk about the stress tests, which was really designed to build confidence, just like the FDIC is about confidence. It's not about real. But according to the most current stress tests in this country, Morgan Stanley is the riskiest bank, and they're at something like their leverage ratio, because they've got to make it so that you don't understand, is something like 3.57 or 3.58%. Deutsche Bank is 1 point higher. So I think Morgan Stanley's 3.7 and Deutsche Bank is 3.8. What that actually means is that for every $3 worth of equity, they borrowed $97. If the value of that equity drops below that, they are insolvent. And we are not even talking about all of the trillions and quadrillions of derivative bets on top of that. No, the banking system is quite weak. It is not strong at all. And there's no more room for bailout. Though they'll do it. There's bail-in.
Yeah. Do you think they're going to be using the bail-in documents that they created, and they had a test in Cyprus to see how it works?
They did it in Greece. Mm-hmm. So the answer is yes, 100%. That's why they put them in place. Yes.
Now, I've been looking at, and we spoke about this before, but I was looking at cryptocurrencies, and when there is a bail-in and we're going through a reset, yes, you can have gold and silver, because if you have physical, you're outside of the central banking system. You're holding it in your house. Nobody can touch it. I mean, they can raid your house and take it, but you can you can take it with you. You can store it someplace. You can bury it. It's completely out of the system. When the reset's finished, you can dig it back up, and now you have all this gold and silver. It's repriced, and you basically insured your wealth. It might not be possible for everyone to take their entire currency out of the bank and, get as much as gold as they possibly can. Maybe they can, maybe they can't. But when I look at cryptocurrencies, this also allows you to take your funds out of the system. So if there is a bail-in, all you have to do is take those dollars, the currency, send it to an exchange, and then from that exchange, buy Bitcoin and basically send it to your offline wallet. Your offline wallet can travel with you anywhere you want to go, as long as you have your private and your public key, because the ledger can be rebuilt at all times, and you always know what you have. So to me, besides gold and silver, this is one of the first ways where, if there is a bail-in or something like that, people, instead of rushing down to the ATM, trying to get as much cash or standing online, they can push a button online and remove as much as they possibly can very, very quickly before the banks start to figure it out, before everything, gets shut down completely.
I'm sorry, but you really think the public is going to know what's going on in the banking system falling apart before the banks do?
No. Come
on. So there are two parts of that question. The very first part, where you were talking about gold and silver. Okay. First of all, when I was looking at all the patterns in the money cycle and what happens to all asset classes during these transitions, and I've personally done those studies. So, what it is when the system crashes, and I'm going to come to Bitcoin in a second because I love that you brought that up. But when the system crashes, okay, it is not that you're going to take your gold and silver and bury it in the backyard and wait until after everything is over, and then you're going to pull it out. Now you've got gold and silver, okay? What you need to do to be prepared is you want to think about your standard of living and do what you can do to sustain that. So it's food, water, energy, security, community, silver and gold barterable, so small fractional pieces, because you're going to actually use that to go to the grocery store and purchase those blueberries or whatever, that tank of gas, etc. Because when this thing really does blow, it is most likely to get pretty local for a minute or two until they start to work things out. The gold is, yes, you want a kind of gold for wealth preservations, but it's not so much to bury in the backyard as it is to take advantage of the opportunities that always come up during these transitions. So it's not really a static kind of tool. It's actually quite an active tool. It does not have to pay you interest because it is the safest thing that you can do. In this country, nobody's really akin to accumulating gold and silver. So nobody's really going to think that you have it. You just have to be quiet. But the function of gold and silver coming into what we're dealing with is absolutely critical. So is cash. You want a certain level of cash out of the banks because we are not going to know 1 second before we're going to lose access to it. And frankly, the more digital it is, the more control the banks have over it. So now, perhaps if you have that cash out of the system, because there are restrictions on that, and that's another story for another day. But if you have that cash in the system, when they do the bail-in, look, banks have not loaned to each other since 2008, and that was a big part of the funding to keep everybody's wheels greased, this credit market wheels greased. So everything went on the central banks. But while in theory, remember, 1996 is when the NSA white paper on cryptocurrencies came out, and look at the index, look at the verbiage, and look at how we talk about them now. Outside of the system, they are private, they're invisible, you have them in a wallet. This is all NSA verbiage. We have adopted it. We think that it's outside of the system. But if you look at what happened in 2015, now when was Bitcoin burst onto the scene? It was either March of April of 2009. When did QE start? March 9th of 2009. Do you think that's a coincidence? 'Cause I don't.
Well, I think it was a planned type of currency that was put out there, and maybe to be an alternative to the central bank fiat system. I mean, if you can look at it.
If the government put that out there and then used their brilliant perception management, they've got lots of practice at this, to make you think that it's outside of the system, when in reality, it is the system that they want you to adopt. Is that a possibility in your mind?
Well, it could be, but it would be very difficult because the ledgers are not just here in the United States. The people can set up these systems across the globe. So even if you take down all the systems here in the United States, you still have them in many other areas where you can still access everything that you need. So,
and what about the IMF? The members of the IMF are almost every Treasury Secretary and almost every central bank chief. And we may see conflict between the US and China and the tariffs and all of that, but those guys at the IMF, they have coordinated a global reflation, admittedly so. So you're right. And in that, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't have some cryptocurrencies, because if you need to do something that is not local, then that might be, and the banks have bailed in, then you're going to have some opportunities there. So I view it more like cash, because recently, because I did a thing on it, the Bank for International Settlements did this whole report on central bank cryptocurrencies. And in it, you can see in the money flower that most of the cryptocurrencies are held within the realm of the system. There is a small area for private cryptos, but that could be gamers, that could be, many other things. The biggest area, if you look at it, that is actually outside of the system is gold money. So you can look at the flower and you can see this. I'm not saying you shouldn't have cryptos, but that is, in my opinion, with all the time that I've spent in there, that is the system that they want us to go to. And if indeed it is immutable, if it is, then they have to burn off all of this debt and all of the derivatives to transfer into that system. And I think that's what the reset is about.
Well, I think the crypto market will move forward without the central banks. There's absolutely no reason.
I'm sure it's moving forward. Yeah.
I mean, the whole, this is from what I see, the whole point of the crypto market is to get around the central banks, to get around the banking system, to not use them whatsoever, actually to show that we don't need them to handle transactions, to purchase something, because think about it. I mean, if I want to buy, if let's say Amazon or something accepts Litecoin and they want to pay their employees in cryptocurrency, they don't go to a bank anymore. There's no reason. You deposit it right in my wallet, my private wallet, offline wallet. There's no reason even to go to a bank. If you wanted to get a loan, you don't need a bank anymore. They have coins, Salt is one of them, where you can get a loan. You don't need the banking system. You don't need JP Morgan Chase. You don't need Citibank. You don't need the IMF. You don't need any of this. All of this could go away.
Okay. So let's think about that. What is the banking system but an intermediary, right? They're an intermediary. So what you're saying, and it's an accurate, what you're saying is that, okay, you no longer need the banking intermediary to create that transaction, but you still need a network of computers and you have all of those exchanges. So has that really gone away or is it shifting? And look at the involvement that has taken place from not just the banks, but the corporations in 2015 and 2016. I mean, look at all of the patents that they have been publishing and the central banks. So right now, that system is Wild West because just like the internet was in the 70s, etc., because the central banks are allowing private markets to go through all of these developments. What nobody knows at this point is what will survive. And it's not so much the cryptocurrency. That's what they want us to use because they've already gotten used to what they call dematerializing, really how you hold your wealth. They've dematerialized it in the stock market. And they want to, and they've really they've been working on dematerializing money. I mean, in the 50s is when we had the first unbacked credit card that came out. Because the easier it is to spend money, the more money you spend. But let's say, and I am really certain that that is the future of money, are these algorithms. But you made a great point in how many there are out there. Well, why do they have any value? What is their functional use other than transactions? Right? They're a transactional currency. Now, I mean, have we not seen what's going on with all of the regulations and with the cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin's supposed to be a flight to safety and I don't even know where it is right now. It's below 10,000. Or something like that. I'll be looking at it, but because I'm going to be talking about this again. But I don't think it's really outside of the system. I think the system has taken over CoinDesk. I mean, who are they owned by, right? Who are these exchanges owned by? What's happening at the exchanges? That's where the fault is. So it really isn't necessarily a direct peer-to-peer transaction. But that's the function of these currencies. So basically, where money was originally, and the need of money was about a way to fairly value your labor, and then if you had any excess, to store it for future use with the same level of purchasing power, that's the function of gold, and that's what gold has done for 6,000 years. Dollars, its was to erode the value over time through inflation and transfer that wealth to the powers that be, and that's happened. The function of, I believe that the function of these cryptocurrencies now is to get you to work for a smart contract and a mathematical formula that is designed to get you to spend your wealth. They do not want us to save. They do not want us to save. We have become from and China's going through this right now. We used to be a manufacturing economy. We made stuff, and then we could sell that stuff to the world. And then through globalization, they transitioned us into a consumer-driven economy where 70% of our economy is about consumption. Consumption, right? Now they want to convert us. They want us to stay consumer-driven. Who's going to be picking up the manufacturing? I mean, this is really an interesting transition that we're in. We're in the fourth revolution. But they want us, these cryptocurrencies that are the ones that are coming out that are designed to hold title, like AC Chain. I mean, there are some others that are coming out too that actually hold title to tangible assets. Okay. Well, now, gosh, you can spend your wealth all over the world because that's tied to a MasterCard or a Visa. Now you go to the mall and you want to shop, or you go online and you want to shop, and ooh, you really like those red boots. Well, don't worry about the equity in the house because it's broken down into itty bitty teeny pieces. It's easier to spend. And even when you think about how heavy gold and silver are to carry around in your pockets, much easier to do it in paper form. So we had gold and silver certificates, which is really what enabled the fiat money thing. Then they got us used to being everything on digital. So now we're working for an algorithm with a smart contract that you didn't write and you didn't read, and you won't know the impact until maybe you don't buy your car tags fast enough. Cars disabled, not by a human, but by a contract. So I know how they're spinning it, and I know that that's what a lot of people have grabbed onto. It's outside of the system. It is decentralized because, hey, there's computers all over the world. So a fail here means that it can still go on. But there is no way on God's green earth. I mean, I am just as certain about this as I am that my name is Lynette, that central banks are going to give up control. The banks are shifting how they intermediate those transactions, but the central banks globally will not give up that control so easily, and certainly not to a computer formula that they can legalize, put different things around, etc. That to me is really about, they've gotten all your purchasing power, according to the Federal Reserve, out of the dollar, there's 4 cents left. And now they got to go for principal. And to me, that's what that's about. I don't feel safe in it. I'm not saying I won't do it, because when that's our tool of barter, I'm going to have to use that too. But if I have a choice, I will never put any of my tangibles title, if I have a choice, onto a crypto coin that can then be used. So it's all psychology. It's all perception management. I won't do it if I have a choice. I will do it if I don't have a choice. But yeah, for me, that's what it's about.
So when this reset comes and you know, the dollar, I mean, will the dollar be the reserve currency anymore, or is this
it can, no, you know, what it means to be the reserve currency is that if you are going outside of your borders to buy something, you have to do it right now. Well, not really so much, with dollars. So that's a huge advantage. But in 2002, frankly, we no longer attracted enough buyers of our debt. And so that really started shifting. And in 2005, Russia already disallowed valuing their assets in terms of dollars. So that's actually been shifting for quite some time. And no, this one I can't guarantee, but I'm certain that it will be the IMF's SDR, and it will be sold because the SDR is actually a basket of currencies, and it just stands for special drawing rights. It's just a name, just like the dollar is a name. It doesn't mean anything, but it's a basket of currencies. Right now, China's been included in that currency basket in October of 2016. But it's the euro. Let's see. It's the euro, the yen, I should put this in there. The Chinese yuan now, the US dollar, and the Swiss franc, British pound. Okay. That's what's in there. Or no, I'm thinking of the dollar index. I'm sorry. But there's just a few of the currencies that are in that basket. They're going to add more. They're going to delete and not delete, but I'm sorry. Let me get a little drink of water. Dilute the power in that SDR basket. So right now we still have the greatest percentage, but China is coming up fast, and China's creating relationships. And as they add more currencies, the power will be diluted more and more and more. And the SDR, the argument will be, but the SDR, you can use this globally because it's all different currencies. So if you just have the SDR and you want to buy something in China, well, you use the cryptocurrency SDR to do that with, and they'll get paid in the local currency there. We'll get paid in the local currency named the dollar here, etc. So we'll have local currencies that are good within our borders, and then the SDR that would be the global reserve currency. And that means all those dollars are coming home for those that are outside there through that substitution fund.
So when those dollars come home, what does that mean for the United States?
Venezuela.
So we're going to see inflation.
Hyperinflation.
And
confidence will be lost in the dollar.
So what should people, I'm not going to say specifically what do you tell each person, but you deal with gold and silver and precious metals at ITM Trading. What would you tell someone to do in this case?
Well, okay. This is what I would tell them. Number one, you want enough barterable so that, again, going back to there are a couple things we have to do. We have to sustain our standard of living. So if you have the ability to do so, have a kitchen garden, right? If you don't have the ability to do so, make sure that you have your food covered for a little while, because food and medicine becomes the two biggest issues for most individuals and causes a lot of depopulation. So you want to cover those two things as well as you can. But if you have physical silver, you'll be able to buy those when they won't take the dollars for them, or you'll need a wheelbarrow full of dollars to buy it, which is really what's happening in Venezuela. So food, water, energy security, the barterability, and the wealth preservation, what you really want to do. Let's say you have a lot of money in the stock market and you just can't believe that this would happen here because people can't. Okay. Well, you want to have the right mix and kind of gold so that if I'm right and we go into hyperinflation and the wealth that's in the current system gets locked in there, well, no problem, because like we saw in Venezuela, when they just reset the value of gold, it went up, 2,400 times, right? That will recoup that. So that will protect any wealth that you choose to keep in the system. And you need a certain level of cash because it's going to be unbelievable for people when it first happens. So you need it out of the banks because your access to what you have in the banks or the brokerage houses is going to shut down just like that. And I'm sorry, if anybody knows 1 second before it happens, that's luck. That is luck. There is no way that you and I are going to know that they're going to do a bail-in before they know they're going to do a bail-in. Okay. And when that happens, that's a button push because everything is already electronic. They don't have to come to your house. So you want a certain level of cash. If you want to have a certain level of cryptocurrency, kind of like the cash thing, then you probably need, a certain amount of that, enough to cover whatever you might need. But you definitely need all of the above to be well protected.
And
go ahead.
Just to give people an idea of how well gold protects your wealth. I told you this before. We went on air here, but in 1914, gold was about $20 an ounce. An average price of a home was about $3,500. So it took you 175 ounces to purchase a home. If you still had the 175 ounces today, the average price of a home is $225,000, maybe $250,000, but the price per ounce is $1,300. So you would have enough to purchase a home today, the same amount of gold that you had back in 1914. If you had that same $3,500 in cash, you're not buying a house with $3,500 in cash. You can see that it did not protect your wealth. Nothing happened to it. And gold did this just by sitting there, doing nothing. I mean, you could have buried it underground and just left it there and just, one day dug it up and said, oh, look what we have here. And all of a sudden, it's repriced. And just like in Venezuela on, February 9th, where they just went ahead and they had a reset and they repriced. So we can
now
see
the market repriced it before that, the black market did, right? But the official price was, suppressed, and it works kind of like a spring. I mean, if you've got something that is going up in value and you keep it down, you push it down and down and down, when you take your hand off, what's going to happen? Just like these markets, when you keep blowing them up, and now they got a hole in it, 2008, they've got a hole in that inflated value, and they just keep pumping it, but the hole didn't go away. It's getting bigger. So if you want to hold your wealth, that's what you do. That's what I would tell you to do. And what we do here is develop those strategies on an individual basis. What are your circumstances? What are your goals? What are you going to choose to do? I mean, that's up to the individual. They all have to do what they're comfortable with. Personally, I do not own any stocks. I do not own any bonds, annuities, CDs, savings account. I do have a checking account because that's still our tool of barter. Annuities. I don't have any of that garbage. That's all fiat garbage. And they may make it look like it's going up, but the real trend is the value of the currency, which is down to 4 cents from 100 cents. That's the real one. That's that nominal confusion piece that just gets people to feel comfortable. It's the frog in the pot of water. But what we do here is develop those strategies on an individual basis, and we're all doing the same strategy. It's just a little different for each person's circumstance.